Good for you, Richard. And then we get to make this a trending subject this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you. It's been a very tough economic year, but as you will note later when we come into our Q&A session and a panel discussion a little later, we'll be finding out why 12.3%. We'll be discussing the next 12 months, what does the fund have in store for us as members. But I wanted, with a show of hands, first of all, to know how many members here have been with the fund for 2 years. Let's begin at 2 years. 2 years, members, 2 years, for at least 2 years now. And I thought everyone here would have their hands up. 2 years. If you're here and your company doesn't contribute, this is a crime. Okay, 10 years. If you've been with the fund for 10 years, I clocked 10 years this year. 10 years? Ah, fantastic. 15? Do we have 15? Wow, I'm jealous. Okay, 20. Now this is a big one. 20. Hey, these are serious members. 25. Please stand. 25, that is, you are, please stand. Let us see you. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. 25 years as a member of the fund. That's very special. Do we know your bank balance right now? Richard, can you share? But before we go to 25, I'm told we have a surprise. 30 years. 30 years? You see. We'll come to the details of the beneficiaries a little later this morning. And I read today in the New Vision a fantastic story of the beneficiary of Nssf who worked with Stanbic Bank. And it's an amazing story what the fund has done for him, what his money has done for him. But that's the story, again, we'll discuss a little later. Allow me at this time, because I know that's why you're all here, to invite the Managing Director, Nssf, to come and give us the Nssf performance report for 2015-2016. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me, Richard Garugawa.
Thanks, Maurice. Ladies and gentlemen, in fulfillment of our transparency agenda, would like to introduce to you the numbers that made up our performance last year. I'd like to draw your attention to the two screens on my left and right. If you could just pick one which is clear, and if you would just remove the light from the audience so that we have a clear view for those. The year was challenging. I think that's not in doubt. Our economy grew, certainly lower than the estimates that we had given or the government had given, largely due to conditions that were exogenous to ourselves, i.e. from outside of Uganda. But certainly Moody's did downgrade us for a moment. However, they did restore our grading towards the end. But certainly the economy really slowed in terms of exports, and because the rest of the world was also suffering with a non-performance in their economies, it did impact on us. There was a little bit of inflation, certainly towards the end of last year, and that did impact on the currency valuation as well, which we saw going down. In fact, the Ugandan currency did go down a lot more than our own other sister currencies. We are a big player in the equity markets, and you will notice that all the stock exchanges, or certainly the major stock exchanges of East Africa, did actually go down in the region of about 15%, Kenya being hardest hit, and Tanzania coming off slightly lighter at about 9%. Our own turned out a reduction of about 14.5%. You'll notice that this did impact on our income and returns, as I will explain a little bit earlier. And obviously, there was a little bit of building up of a risk premium, a risk premium within the valuation of the companies, largely brought around by the election season that we had, not only in Uganda, as you recall, but also in Tanzania, because you recall that the Tanzanians were coming out of the election season as well, and we also entered our own. So largely, that did impact on our performance. However, in spite of that challenging environment, we did manage to bring in some good results, and you'll be able to see from the numbers that our numbers did continue to improve. We had the best compliance rates ever for the fund. We hit 78%, and that means that we were able to collect contributions in excess of 14% of the previous year. So we brought in contributions of about 780 billion shillings, and you'll notice that that did drive our performance on the balance sheet side. Our balance sheet therefore grew from 5.6 trillion shillings to 6.6 trillion shillings, and that's largely because of the number of money we were able to collect from our members, but also from the revenues that we're able to earn from our own investments that we had. So as a result of that, we were still able to invest in the three asset classes in which the fund invests, which are the fixed income securities or treasury bonds, mostly government treasury bonds, equities, and also the real estate. In fact, last year was our largest growth on the equity markets, and you'll notice that from our growth year on year. Our fixed income portfolio grew from 4.2 trillion to 4.9 trillion shillings, and continued to constitute the largest percentage of our investment at 77%. Our equities grew from 734 billion to 900 billion. In fact, if the markets hadn't come down, we would have touched the 1 trillion mark. In fact, the markets have recovered, and we've really touched the 1 trillion mark for the equities, and that still constitutes only 16% of our portfolio. The allocation of our portfolio is a very important number for us because it gives us the ability to be able to give the best possible outcome of our investment, at the same time trying to diversify, because economic cycles affect asset classes differently. So you will recall that in high interest regimes, their returns on fixed income might be bigger, but those might affect your equities. For example, the companies might not perform well in a high inflation. So that's why we would like to have a good spread. Our strategic asset allocation, which is basically what we'd like to have as our optimum, would be to reduce our fixed income to about 73% and increase our equity portfolio to about 21%. That would give us the best possible outcome, and we continue to work towards that. As you have noticed from those numbers, very little happened with the real estate, and that's because a lot of the work we've been doing has been in the planning, coming up with contractors, and being able to then invest in the real estate. But the other news is that we didn't want to invest in the real estate, given that the real estate market, as you probably know, in Uganda, has become overvalued, and there's been a crash really in the market, and we didn't want to be caught in that cycle. So what does that mean for our revenues? Our revenues meant that in terms of our realized revenue, they did increase by 21% from 583 billion shillings in 2015 to 780 billion shillings, which is a growth of about 22%, largely driven by interest on our bonds, and also a very good return in our dividends. Some of our major companies, I'm glad to say, were people like Umeme, Safaricom, Equity Bank, and KCB in terms of dividend payouts to us. The other area that obviously affected our performance, which you'll notice on the next slide, is that our investments in equities tanked down, and because we've got to pass that through our P&L. That means that if you look at the three lines, The very line at the top, which reflects the total revenue, you'll notice that that tanked to 663 billion shillings, largely because of the valuation losses we had to take through our profit and loss. But you'll also notice that we were able to continue to pay a high quantum of money to our members, which is the next line, while holding our performance in terms of expenses quite stable. So you'll notice that the red line, which represents our expenses, largely remained down in spite of the challenges that we had with our total revenue numbers. And that's because of the efficiencies we could continue to build within the business. The other area I'd like to share with you is obviously the interest. We came up with a target to our members, a promise to our members, that we will ensure that the interest we pay you is always 2 percentage points above the 10-year inflation. And you'll notice that from the graph jaws, the red line represents your average inflation over the last 10 years, and the red line represents the interest that we've paid you over the period. And you'll notice that there was a slight dip in the interest we paid, largely because of the non-performance of our equity. However, the message we'd like to still maintain and give to our members is that we will cover you for inflation, and therefore will preserve the value of your funds once you've invested them with us. Last year, we also had to utilize some of the reserves that we were able to build over the period. One of the big things that we as a pension do is to try and keep away some money in good times, so that when bad times come, like they did last year, we will be able to dip away from that. So if you pay attention to that equation, our total return on assets, net of taxes, because we actually do pay taxes, was a return of 12.7%. We paid our members 12.3%. Our expenses were 1.3% of the assets, and therefore we had to dip from our reserves about 0.9%. But that's because we've been able to grow them to about 272 billion shillings. So we're able to utilize and own and retain 166 billion shillings, which we believe is a good target for us to be able to then continuously invest within our fund and our members. The other thing that we've also been doing is to try and improve the efficiencies, and that's really measured by the amount of money that we pay out to our members who are qualifying. Those went out in the region of about 28%. Last year, we paid out 239 to qualifying members, and there were about 14,000. Both the numbers and the values went up, which basically shows that we have brought down the number from 36 days in 2012 to the current 8 days that it takes for our members to receive their money once they've put their claim in our offices. We're still struggling with our data and also in the way we process that information with regard to the old data. However, we believe that once we have converted onto a new system, which we are preparing to, we should be able to pay this within a day or two for our qualifying members. However, the number that I really like to share with you is that our members are living longer. 97% of our members are still alive, and it's only 3% that are unfortunately passing on. To engage them, we do take customer surveys, and we've been able to donate staff time to CSR over 1,000 man-hours. However, we also believe that our staff are energized, they are happy, and the surveys show that their satisfaction, their alignment to our strategy is increasing. Alignment to strategy is about 94%. So in other words, 94% know where we are going, where we're coming from, what we need to do to get there. But more importantly, 86% of our staff are very happy to work with us. And we believe that once they're happy, they can pass this on to our customers, because our customers, again, are telling us they're happier. Last year, they were at 88%. This year, we did a new survey. Our customers appreciate our services up to the level of 89%. And we've got a couple of good emails. This one, I like it because it talks about, this was somebody who was living in the diaspora, came back to claim their money. and said that he was happy that there was a local institution being run by local people for local members, and we were capable of competing with institutions in the diaspora. So, which is really a good message for us. On the compliance side, I know my regulator is in the room, so I've got to say this. We've been licensed by the regulator. We've already procured 3 fund managers. It is one of the requirements of the new regulation. We've also procured 4 custodians. That basically means we do not hold the assets. They are held by the custodian, and the fund managers also help us in managing the funds. But the $10 million question, there is a law in Parliament. It's called the Liberalization Bill or the Reform Bill. We believe that once that bill comes into place, we as a fund are prepared to be able to compete with the rest of the players that will be allowed onto the market. But the good news is that the new law also allows us to introduce new things that we are not able to do now, like new products for our members, midterm access, access to housing, access to medical, and also access to things like education, which would be a very good addition to our suite of products that we offer to our members. So let the competition come, let the new regulation come, let the new products come, we will be able to provide. This is my favorite slide. It's a new slide, and what we've tried to do is to try and show what our impact has been on the economy. You might not be able to see the actual numbers, but I'll read them line for line. The first contribution is that Nssf Uganda holds 38% of Uganda's government debt. So Bank of Uganda has borrowed, or Government of Uganda has borrowed from Nssf to the tune of all the amount of money, 38%. So we are a big, big player in the market of securities. And as a result of that, we've been able to run some of our models and to demonstrate that as a result of our participation in the market, we've been able to bring the interest rate down from whatever it is by at least 2 percentage points. Because if we were not participating in the market, then there wouldn't be that liquidity for government to be able to borrow. So we believe that by participating in the market, we've been able to bring the interest rates down. And I know that there is a huge discussion about how high the interest rates are in this market, but we believe that because, but not safe place, which is that long end of the curve, we've been able to bring the interest rates down by at least 2 percentage points. The other thing is that because of the amount of money we've invested in companies, we can directly say that we have contributed to about 5,500 employees in this country because of the money we've invested in the businesses in which we've put our money. And then the second last is the tax number. We paid 127 billion shillings in our tax last year, and we have invested 1.5 trillion shillings of the fund in markets outside of Uganda, really in East Africa. So almost 2 trillion shillings, or quite a big chunk of our investments are outside of Uganda, within the equity markets, but also on the bond markets. And that's mostly because of the returns that these companies give us, and also the tax advantages that these governments have been able to offer us, specifically Kenya, Tanzania, and even Rwanda, in terms of our returns on the fixed income. So what's our outlook for the future, certainly this coming year? We believe that Uganda will continue to grow. The anticipated growth is about 5%. We are very optimistic that there will be a gradual depreciation of the currency. It's very important for us because if it's erratic, then obviously it disrupts our plans. But if it's gradual, then we can actually plan and actually factor the depreciation in. The country, the economy continues to spend a lot of money on the infrastructure, and we believe that that will continue to drive economic development in this country, and that's an opportunity for us to be able to lend into the infrastructure space. Inflation is still targeted in the region of 5%, plus or minus 2%, and we believe that those targets are going to be achieved, and therefore with a good environment in terms of inflation, we think that we can be able to continue to make money for our members and actually invest. That will mean that the expected interest rates, the pressure on interest rates will ease, and we think that That will mean that we are able to invest on the long yield curve to be able to then give a good return to our members. And then finally, looking at the Tanzanian economy, we believe that they still are running a tight monetary policy. There's been a new president in there. There have been a lot of changes. They're doing some really good things, which we believe that we can invest in too. Specifically, their infrastructure bonds, which are given to us at a tax-free rate with a longer tenure. And we think that we can continue to participate in them. And certainly, in Kenya, the big question continues to be the election. How will that impact on the election that's coming next year? How will that impact on the macro economic environment? And how will our companies and our bonds continue to fare in that particular market? So we've got to sort of keep our eye on that. And therefore, our targets for this year, on the financial side, we want to grow our contributions from about 780 billion to about 900, just short of 1 trillion. Our balance sheet size will touch almost 8 trillion, and our revenues should grow to almost 900 billion shillings. On our customer service side, we'd like to improve our satisfaction to about 90% and also continue to provide our members with the target of 2% plus 10-year inflation. On our processes side, our benefits will grow to about 300 billion shillings, and we will be working to reduce the turnaround time from 8 days to about 7 days. And finally, with our staff, we want to continue to provide our customer satisfaction, hopefully 90%, and then hopefully increase the amount of time our members give, our staff give to the CSR activities. So about 1,200 from about 1,000 that we did last year. So that's our targets for this particular year. And in conclusion, I would like to assure the members that we are on course to achieve our target of 20 trillion by the year 2025. We are on course to continue managing our costs, and we are on course to continue providing with the transparency and accountability that we are doing today, and we will continue to take advantages of investment opportunities in the markets, both in Uganda and those surrounding us. Thank you so much for listening to me. I would now like to ask the chairman of the board, I'd like to ask the Auditor General to come and give their audit opinion. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Minister, Chairman, and board members, distinguished members, particularly those over 35, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure this morning to present to you the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the National Social Security Fund for the year ended 30th of June 2016. The report is addressed to the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament. I have audited the accompanying financial statements of the National Social Security Fund, which comprise the statement of net assets available for benefits as at 30th of June 2016, the statements of changes in net assets available for benefits, changes in members' funds and reserves, and cash flows for the year then ended, and notes comprising a summary of significant accounting policies and other explanatory information. The Director's responsibility for the financial statements. The Fund's Directors are responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with International Financial Reporting Standards and the requirements of the Uganda National Social Security Fund Act, CAP 222, and for such internal control management determines is necessary to enable the preparation of financial statements that are free from material misstatements, whether due to fraud or due to error. The auditor's responsibility. My responsibility, as required by Article 163 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda and Section 13 and 19 of the National Audit Act 2008, is to audit and express an opinion on these statements based on my audit. I conducted the audit in accordance with international standards on auditing. These standards require that I comply with the ethical requirements and plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance whether the financial statements are indeed free from material misstatements. An audit involves performing procedures to obtain audit evidence about the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. The procedures selected depend on the auditor's judgment, including the assessment of the risk of material misstatements of financial statements, whether due to fraud or error. In making those risk assessments, the auditor considers internal controls relevant to the entity's preparation and fair presentation of financial statements in order to design audit procedures that are appropriate in the circumstances, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the entity's internal control. An audit also includes evaluating the appropriateness of accounting policies used and the reasonableness of accounting estimates by management, as well as evaluating the overall presentation of the financial statements. I believe that the audit evidence obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for my opinion. The opinion. In my opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the National Social Security Fund as of 30th June 2016, its financial performance and its cash flows for the year then ended, in accordance with international financial reporting standards and the requirements of the National Social Security Fund Act, CAP 222. Emphasis of matter. Without qualifying my opinion, I draw attention to Note 35B to the financial statements, which I also reported on in my previous report. Notice of assessment for corporation tax. The fund is challenging the basis on which the Uganda Revenue Authority disallowed certain expenses in calculating the company's tax assessment for the year ended 30th of June 2013. The note also indicates the directors have not recognized any provision for the liability of Uganda shillings 84.4 billion to the Uganda Revenue Authority, as management believes the tax treatment adopted by NSSF is in accordance with the provisions of Section 22, subsection 1A, and Section 25 of the Income Tax Act. The note gives details of the case and explains that the directors have disclosed a contingent liability as the ultimate outcome of the case could not be determined. Signed, John F.S. Mwanga, Auditor General of the Republic of Uganda. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for Richard and John. I'm extremely excited because every year when Richard speaks, I find a reason to request for a salary increase at the office. And something never happens. It just never goes right on my side. But Richard always does his part. The 12.3%, Richard, you surprised us. You surprised many people. And I must say, as a member, we are extremely excited about it. But ladies and gentlemen, I will not be the one making these remarks today. I will ask the questions. So I want to invite the chairman, Patrick Kaberenge, to come and make his remarks as the chairman of the board. But also I want to request that he invites our chief guest, who is the State Minister for Finance, in charge of general duties. Chairman.
Thank you, MC. Our chief guest, Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, here represented by the Minister of State for Finance, in charge of general duties, Engineer Dr. Ajedra Gabriel Aridru. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. Honorable members of the NSSF are present, members of Parliament, my fellow colleagues on the board, Nssf MD, Mr. Richard Biarugaba, and I can see you have come here with your full team and executive. Many CEOs I've seen here are present. You are very much our valuable employers out there. How could I have missed the Auditor General? My professional colleague, the Auditor General, Mr. John Mwanga, thank you for the seriousness with which you deal with our organization and the speed. You can see we were able to get all the data out in the lawful time. Thank you for your input. Many other stakeholders we deal with at the National Social Security Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm most honored and delighted to be here this morning to share a moment with you, dear members of the NSSF. My second time. I recall I was at the same podium last year, and we did serious business, and we promised you to do more serious business. I am happy we are back here to present what we promised at that time. Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, allow me to particularly introduce members of my board with whom we have successfully steered the NSSF over the last year of our service. As you recall, we were appointed as the 10th board of the NSSF on the 1st of September last year, 2015. So we are just a year plus in our duties. We are 9, and I should introduce the other 8, starting with Madam Sarah Irene Warusimbi. She represents the Federation of Employers. I don't see Penina. Oh, lovely. She was looking the other side. Madam Penina Tukamwesiga, representing the workers. A very strong, youthful representative on the board, and very useful. I don't see Florence. Florence is traveling. She's traveling out of the country, but I will introduce her in absentia. I think together with Mr. Pius Bigirimana, the PS gender, is also traveling. So those two have not been able to join us. Mr. Andrew Stewart Obita, he represents the workers. He represents them very strongly, I must assure you. Mr. Nelson Wafana Makwasi, representing the workers. very strong representatives, and last but not least, Mr. Richard Vyarugaba, the Managing Director NSSF, who was here just a few minutes ago. Honorable Minister, sir, that is the board that you appointed a year ago, and we continue to carry out the task that you charged us with, and we are doing it wholeheartedly. Furthermore, I would like to salute the work of the following board committees, without whose diligent and detailed efforts the main board would not be able to fulfill its mandate in a timely manner. I start with the Audit and Risk Assurance Committee. If the members of the board who sit on that committee are here, they can stand up for recognition. Very good. And that committee is led by Madam Sarah. The Finance Committee, led by Director Andrew Stewart Obita. Very good. The Investment and Project Monitoring Committee, oh, there was another member, Mr. Patrick Oshailap, the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. How come I'd forgotten, but he's not here. I think he's another meeting. He's the chairperson of the Investments and Project Monitoring Committee. And Mr. Minister, as I joined the board, I was told and cautioned by your office that I should take personal extra focus on the Investment and Projects Monitoring Committee, because many projects had stalled because of various logistical difficulties of this committee. I have continued to do so, and I must say I think we are doing well. The Staff Administration and Corporate Affairs Committee, those members who sit on it, you can stand, Saka. They are led by Madame Florence Maweje, who is not here with us. She's the HR manager at Centenary Bank and a very resourceful board member. Mr. Minister, these committees meet regularly to ensure that the fund guide management towards achievement of our strategic objectives without the risk of micromanaging. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, as we have severally said over the last 2 weeks, the business environment, as already elucidated by the MD here, was not easy during the last year. The fluctuating foreign exchange rates, relatively slow economic growth, poor performance of the stock markets in the region, among other factors, posed an investment challenge to us. That we were able to emerge with a good performance, as we've just seen, is a testament to the resilience of the fund, its management, and the staff. It was tough, but we still managed to make quite a good performance in the circumstances. This resilience is not by accident, Honorable Minister. It required good leadership provided by yourself in the ministry. It required good and strong direction provided by the board, and it required planning and execution of these plans by management and the staff. Working in consonance, we delivered to the members a reasonable return to the members of the National Social Security Fund of 12.3. The fund is also resilient because during our tenure, we have emphasized on good corporate governance. We shall continue to strengthen the fund and encourage teamwork at all levels. And those who cannot play by team values cannot keep working at the Nssf because they will be reducing value instead of adding value. And that is not the purpose that you put us there. The most important task of the board of directors is to steer the fund's strategy in a manner that will ensure the meeting of the commercial and corporate targets both in the short and long term and generate value to the members. Honorable Minister, sir, our board has made it clear to all concerned that we must pull in the same direction as I've said. And to the fund, those pulling in the opposite direction when we are moving forward, they will find it a hot place. NSSF members expect us to deliver results no matter the circumstance. We have no intention whatsoever of disappointing these members, and certainly not under the watch of this board of directors. Finally, I wish to express my gratitude and our gratitude as a board to you, the Honorable Minister, for your oversight role and fast decision making. And to my board, I want to thank them for continuing to sacrifice their valuable time to serve the fund. To the management of NSSF and general staff, I want to thank you for your efforts and commitment to further establish the fund as the social security provider of choice. To you, our members, whom we aspire to offer a better life, thank you for trusting us with your money. We will be open and transparent with you. We pledge our commitment to serve you even better this financial year. And before I invite the minister to come and give his remarks, I wanted to leave you with a small quote to mull over. And this quote is from an artist, a 19th century artist called John Ruskin. Those of you in the arts might remember a lot of his works. And he died many years ago, actually in 1900. And he said, "A little thought and a little kindness are often worth more than a great deal of money." Let me repeat. A little thought and a little kindness are often worth more than a great deal of money. So, NSSF as a board, we shall continue to maximize generally to get as much for the members as possible. But that should be not our ultimate goal, to get as much money for you. I think in our work, in our thinking, in our planning, we should have a little thought and a little kindness to the plight of the working members. and we should have and promulgate policies that can meet some of those sensitivities that afflict members during their working life. Thank you very much for listening to me. I now take this opportunity to invite our chief guest, Honorable Engineer Dr. Jedra Gabriel Aridru, Minister of State for General Duties, representing the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman, for those remarks. The members of Parliament who are here present, Chairman and the Board, members, the Managing Director and the Senior Management and Executive of Nssf, the Auditor General, CEOs of the various companies represented here present, fellow members of Nssf as stakeholders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to bring the apology of my senior colleague, Honorable Kasaija, who's in Washington for the annual spring meeting. So he could not be able to be here with you this morning, and he has requested me to represent him. I'm glad to join you this morning in the fourth Nssf annual general meeting. Just before I came here, I was talking to the MD and said, I thought Nssf has been around for quite a long time. Why is it that we're only having now the fourth annual general meeting? He says, no, it was introduced during his tenure. So now you can understand, after all these years, we did not even used to have annual general meeting. So thank you very much, MD, for that innovation. This meeting is very important for you, the members of Nssf, as it gives you an opportunity to appraise the fund's financial performance as well as future plans, which I think the MD has ably laid before you this morning. I would like to talk a little about the subject of transparency and accountability, which is the essence of the reason why we're here this morning. To begin with, I'm very pleased that this is the first becoming an integral and essential part of the fund's business practices, which also requires good governance, as has been alluded to by the chairman of the board. Today, this morning, we all listened to the report of the Auditor General and his opinion on the fund's financial statement for the year ending 2015-2016, confirming that they, I quote, a true and fair view of the financial position of Nssf Fund as at 30th June 2016, and its performance and its cash flows in accordance with international financial reporting standards. That is certainly very commendable. Auditor General, I want to thank you for that. It's also pleasing to note that in the 5th year running, the fund has obtained an qualified opinion from the Auditor General. The fund is among the few public entities in Uganda that have for a number of years been given a clean bill of health by an independent body as the Auditor General. And that's a sign of accountability and transparency on the part of the management and the board. And therefore, I want to compliment all your efforts. Secondly, some days ago, I announced a new interest rate to the members for the financial year 2015-2016. And I'm pleased to note that the fund openly expounded its financial performance, which is the basis for which I announced that interest rate. The fund was also candid about the difficult investment environment in which it operated, not only here in Uganda, but also in the region. I think from the MD's report, you could hear that they've ventured into Kenya, they've ventured into Tanzania, and they're a regional player in the market. Thirdly, the idea of members meeting where the fund board and the management report on the business performance, strategies, and outlook going forward is something that we support as Ministry of Finance, to whom they are responsible. This platform also gives opportunity to you, the members, a chance to ask questions and get answers immediately, which is also a sign of transparency. To the board members of NSSF and the management, the responsibility that is invested in you requires you at all times to act in the best interest and the sole benefit of the members. You must never waver, misuse, or abuse this responsibility, which is why the theme for this meeting is transparency and accountability to the members' savings. We all save with NSSF, and we want to sleep knowing very well that our funds are secure and that it is growing. It has not been eroded by inflation. And I'm happy that I think in their strategic plan or in the operations, they have maintained an interest rate of 2% above a 10-year inflation. To you, the members of NSSF, and those representing the worker groups, employees, and other stakeholders, this annual meeting is a chance for you to hold the board and the management accountable for their actions. And this is your chance also to find out if the fund is fundamentally strong, and that requires that your funds that are invested, whether the board and the management are actually aligned to the interests of you as a saver. Before I make the concluding remarks of the minister, I want to comment on a few things which the chairman, the MD, and also I think the Auditor General has reported on. And one of them is that NSSF holds about 38 of our national debt, government debt, which is quite substantial. And I think it's one of the reasons why the interest rates continue to be high in this country. As we're preparing the budget for next financial year, we do hope that we can be able to, as a Ministry of Finance, in the management and also developing the policies, especially the fiscal policies for this country, that we'll be able to try to reduce on that borrowing. Because one of the reasons why the interest rates are high to the private sector is because of that excessive borrowing by government. I'm also happy to note that, happy and sad to note, that 2 trillion of our money is outside. There's nothing wrong with it because it earns very good returns for us as members. But also, you see, that's the amount of money that could easily be invested locally here in the country. Just imagine that amount of investment within the country, what it can do to the growth of this economy. You heard that the growth has not been very high as we had anticipated as Minister of Finance at 5.6. It's about 4.8 in this financial year. And therefore, to be able to sort of push it up, we believe that local investment is also very important. But that also requires, as has been alluded to, that we need to introduce a new bill that will increase competition in the sector. And that requires the board and the management for you to be innovative in whatever investment decisions that you are going to be making. From the presentation of the managing director, you will see there are 3 portfolios within which your money is being held, or our money is being held. It's being held in income, it's been held in real estate, and equity. We believe that by venturing into other innovative areas, we can be able to increase your dividends. Lastly, there was a comment about deteriorating. I think it has stabilized, but the weaker Uganda shilling compared to other major currencies I think this has been largely on account of weak exports, but also largely because of the low commodity prices. As most of you know, Uganda, our economy is largely agricultural based. We don't have a huge manufacturing base, and therefore, whenever the prices of commodities internationally drop, and that has an immediate impact in terms of we as a country getting in foreign currency. So we should be able to address some of those in our next years. Einstein said, and I quote, for those who are scientists, I think the chairman was saying that for those of you who are artists, so I want to say for those of you who are scientists, this is what Einstein said. And if you don't know who Einstein was, Einstein is the person who changed the course of this world. He's the one who discovered the atomic bomb. And as you know, the impact of having the atomic bomb in this country, I mean, in this world, what it has. So he's the single person who has changed basically the destiny of this. And he said, and I quote, when you do the same thing over and over again, do not expect different results. I repeat, at whatever level you are in, whether in your family, whether in your business, wherever you're doing in your workplace, when you do the same thing over and over again, do not expect a different result. So, management, chair and the board, don't do the same thing year in, year out. Innovate so that you can be able to grow the members' savings. With those few remarks, it's my pleasure to declare it open. I suppose you're going to have discussions now. So I declare this meeting open. I say this for God and my country. Members, as you know, Wednesday is cabinet. I would have loved to stay with you up to lunchtime, but because of cabinet, I must now rush back to cabinet. I came here to represent my senior colleague to officiate at this function. So please permit me, don't take offense if I leave immediately after my presentation. Thank you very much. I wish you a fruitful day.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and thank you for your time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will be taking a very small entertainment break, and our band will lead us through that. But before that, I wanted to mention that we have a hashtag we're using today, Nssf Amm 16. So let's get tweeting, let's get Facebooking, use the same on Instagram. Richard did tweet, and we are somewhere. We're about 20 retweets on our selfie, customary selfie. Please go and retweet. I'll give you an update shortly. But also I must mention, for those of you who are hard up on data, this thing called data, we have free Wi-Fi. So if you could quickly take the password. Now I know this is when you get busy. It's interesting how passwords are very important, you know, lately. Okay, the password is 12 and NSSF. So it's 12 NSSF, NSSF in caps. 12 NSSF. Look out for the Kampala Serena Wi-Fi, and it will ask you for a voucher. You load the password I've just given you in the same space. 12 NSSF. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me, Quad A Band. right, as soon as I have the microphones working, we should be able to begin Q&A session. And ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity for us as members to ask the hard questions or probably want some clarity on the direction of NSSF. So joining me for this panel discussion are people who have already spoken to us this morning, the Managing Director, NSSF, Richard, and the Chairman, who will be taking the hard questions this morning. So probably I am just checking that our microphones are working. Richard, if you could say something.
Testing.
Perfect. Chairman.
Yes, I'm on.
Ah, fantastic. So as soon as I have either of the microphones working, we should be able to begin. But I'll begin with you, Richard, and I'll probably stay here until I have that sorted. This was an election year, and I know in your presentation you talked about the Kenyan election next year. So as we discuss this much later, I know we'll come to investments in the Kenyan market. But looking at the election year we had this year, which has been extremely tough on the economy, you've sailed this ship and you've done an awesome job doing that. But many in the market, before you announced the 12.3%, were projecting 10%, 11%. Just make us understand how you came up with the 12.3%, because that was really a surprise. And the reason I keep saying it is not many expected you to be that high, given the state of the economy and the market itself.
I think one of the reasons the fund has been reasonably successful in the past continues to be our diversification strategy. You will notice that during any period in an economy, different asset classes behave differently to the circumstances. As you probably know, during a high inflation period, your fixed assets or your fixed income assets will probably do better because you're hedging against inflation and you're basically pricing in that loss in value. So you'll find that the reason we're able to pay a reasonable interest rate this year is because our investments in fixed income went up, but largely because we diversified quite a lot of money outside of the Ugandan economy. For information of our members, Kenya, Tanzania, and even Rwanda give very good tax incentives. They don't charge any interest. They don't charge tax on their interest that we earn. So you'll find that in Uganda, once we have invested and we are paid an interest rate income, there is a withholding tax, I think of 15 or 20%, which is charged on that. In those countries, they've come up with specific bonds, specific infrastructure instruments, which they would like to encourage the external world to invest in there. And therefore, they've given tax incentives, and therefore these bonds are tax-free. So, one, diversification, because as I said, the equity markets are the ones that didn't do well, but the bond markets did very well. And that's really part of the success of it. But the other one is in obviously economies of scale that we've been able to build, the efficiencies that we've been able to build in the business. You'll notice that our costs have largely remained the same in spite of our increase in value. I mean, I can almost say that since 2011, our costs have remained the same and our volumes have almost tripled. So, taking advantage of economies of scale, making sure that we automate, because automation obviously gives you those advantages, reducing the amount of error that we commit, and that obviously we pass on to our customers. And therefore, we are able to also find good places to invest our money.
The minister, in his remarks, raised the issue, and you say it, your investment in the region is to the tune of 2 trillion shillings. He says, imagine that money in our economy. Looking at the numbers, you make a good case, but isn't that a concern, that you have more money out of our economy and in the region?
Well,
you must think regional too.
Yeah, we've got to think regional. First of all, for diversification, right? We had an election in Uganda. The Tanzanian economy was doing very well. They freed their capital markets. They allowed more players into there. There are more companies listing there. We've got Vodafone coming up. It's public information now. The telcos are going to list in So there's more happening in the region than is happening here. So in Uganda, we would love, and I've said this so publicly, we would love to invest in Uganda, but give me the products, all right? The last time we had any company listing in Uganda was in 2012, Umeme, right? No other company has come forward. You know, we've had companies listing in Kenya, we've had companies listing in Tanzania. So, and they've got tax advantages. We don't have those tax advantages here. So I think that the policy people, and I've always mentioned this to the policy people, that they've got to look at what's happening in the other places and really pick some of these good things to give us those opportunities to be able to invest here. I can't answer that question. You know, I like to talk about this number. We collect about 70 billion a month. We've got maturities of another maybe 50 billion. So that's 120. So if you remove plus or minus expenses and all the things that we do with the money, pay benefits, you'll find that we've got at least 120, 130 billion to reinvest every month. Now, if you look at the treasury bill auctions, last month or this month they've done only 80 billion. So there's another 40 billion that we need to find a home for. And if we can't find it in Uganda, we'll have to find it elsewhere. But it also helps us in our diversification.
All right. Now, many in the market, including myself, think as a member, you're optimally cautious with our money. And I like the numbers when you say 77% is going to, you know, fixed income, and you're looking at, you know, increasing the money in equity section because you're coming from 16 maybe to 20 as you drop from 77 to 73.
Yeah.
I still think you're being very cautious. I know the equities didn't do well in the last 12 months, but many would be saying, can't you put a little more money in real estate, put a little more money in the fixed, you know, in the equities that could actually generate a better return than where you're safe, which is the fixed income, you know, the treasury. And when you look at your portfolio, if many of you have the folders, most of our money, about 4 billion, in the last 12 months went to treasury bills. I mean, you're very cautious. I know,
Yes.
and members must be happy that their money is safe,
But we've got to be
we could
cautious.
make more money, yes.
Sorry, Maurice, we've got to be cautious. First of all, we are a pension scheme, right? We are a contributory scheme. These are members' monies. They do not want to get to the age of 55 and arrive at our doors, and guess what? We've got all of it in real estate, and we can't, right? Try to sell a property today in Uganda. You'll hardly be able to raise money because the property prices, as you know, have come down, the market has crashed, there's no liquidity, right? So we need to be cautious. We need to make sure that our members have their money when they come back to us. But we've also done modeling. Our modeling shows that if we are to meet our targets, we definitely need to increase our exposure to companies. We need to reduce our exposure to fixed income. And we are about right on our real estate because unfortunately for us, we have a lot of non-performing assets within the real estate, which is basically land. That hasn't appreciated as much as it did in the past. So we need to change the business model there. We are introducing a lot of build and sell. We need to be cautious that the market can take that property. We also need to be cautious about the rental property specifically. You know that there was a glut of properties towards when oil was discovered, and a lot of these properties are not actually renting out. We've been lucky with our own properties that we've got rental percentages of about 90%, almost 95%. So, you know, we've got to be cautious. The real estate market, as you all know, brought the whole of the world down. I mean, if you recall, the 2008 you know, bust that the whole of the world went through was brought by real estate. Basically, real estate overvaluing to prices where people couldn't afford them, and therefore the whole, and people building and coming up with all these derivatives, which then brought the whole economy down. So we have to be cautious because we are dealing with pensioners' money, and we just can't invest because, just because it is a fad. We've got to do it if there is a business case, if there is a market, we've got to do our research, see that the pricing that we're putting in there is affordable. We've got to make sure that we drive the mortgage market. You know, one of the biggest impediments is that in this country there's only 10,000 mortgages. Now, how are we going to sell these properties if there isn't a proper mortgage market which will enable us to actually sell? So we've got to be very cautious in real estate.
Thanks, Richard. Chairman, I wanted to ask, the board 1 year down the road, you've done well, the fund has done well. What is your strategy in the next 12 months? Where do you want to see the board going? Where do you want to see the fund going as a board? What are these key areas you want to ask Richard to prioritize?
Thank you. One, as you say, we've done very well as a fund. We've added on ₦1 trillion assets under management. When we joined 1 year ago, the fund was having 5.6. As at end of June, it was 6.6 trillion. And we continue growing. So, we would love to continue in that income generating direction. You know, Nssf is a big ship. It's a juggernaut. And if you want to steer it in any direction, you should do it carefully. Otherwise, you injure bits and pieces of the membership and the economy. For example, you've heard that there is 5 trillion out of our 6.6 is lent to government. Suppose we said we want to take off this 1 trillion from government in the next 3 months. That is not easy. Current low taxation collection in Uganda. You know, we are collecting about 13% of our GDP, when the rest of the region is collecting about 22%. So I think something needs to be done, not by URA only, but many businesses, employers, government. We need to find a way why Uganda keeps collecting low taxes. So, in other words, if we are getting some good money and the government is still in a deficit, is still begging and wanting for funding, and we are getting 15, 16, 17% return on government bond, we shall hang in there for a little while. Because when, for example, the oil starts streaming in, let me say 5 years from today, government may not be as desperate as it is today. So while the government wants, we shall give a service. Actually, we are giving a service to Ugandans. Almost 5/6 of our money is with the government, so that the government can operationalize. So we shall hang in there, reasonable percentage. Let me say 3/4 of our fund will remain in the government bonds. Actually, I recently made a visit to the US, and surprise, surprise, I found that the national fund there, equivalent to Nssf of Uganda here, they invest their funds 100% in the government, 100%, not a point less than 100%. Now, that one you can debate on the pros and cons of that, but the employees feel very safe in US government bonds and treasuries. So that is 100%. Ours is 3/4, quite comparable. Now, we have a strategic plan which we found here in place at the Nssf, which was passed last year in 2015. It wants this fund to grow to 20 trillion assets under management. It wants membership to grow. Right now, we are 35, 36 million Ugandans. And those registered with the Nssf who are working, let me say working population is, let us say, 30%. That will be 12 million Ugandans working somehow, and who should be saving for their retirement.
15 million.
15 million. So 15 million people working. Those registered with the Nssf are only 1.5 million, 10%. And those who are contributing actively every end of month are only about 700,000. Half of that. So we would love more. I think there is a lot of potential out there to get more Ugandans to know that it is important to save for your retirement. And for those who are relatively young, they may not know the despair a retired person can be. If you interviewed 100 retirees, the despair and the fear they carry. Because look, if you retire at 60, do you know you can easily leave? Research has been done. Those who reach retirement age of 60 have a big likelihood to live another 20 years. So if you reach 60, very likely you will die around 80. How do you live these 20 years plus? So it is important to save. So we shall continue making that outreach. If we look at companies, we are encouraging Ugandans, and the Capital Markets Authority can really help us in this aspect, to get more companies to register on the Uganda Stock Exchange so that they can have access to easier and cheaper financing from institutions like the Nssf. The housing deficit, maybe before I talk the housing deficit, real estate in Nssf, when our 10th board came in place, we found 4 stalled projects, 4 key. There might be other small ones, but 4 key for the information of the members. One was Pension Towers, a building which was designed around the year 2000, 16 years ago. They kept revising those designs for 8 years. Can you imagine? That brings us 2008. 2008, we start construction. Some of us on this front were not there at that time, 2008. But construction started. The foundation was finished. This is a $110 million project. The foundation was finished in about 3-4 years. Maybe it should have taken 1 or 2 years. But the long procurement process in Uganda, somehow the foundation gets finished in 2012. Today is 2016, 4 years later. That building on Lumumba Avenue is still there, 3/4 and done. Every rain you hear is going into the floors of that place. Every day, they are pulling out, you know, Rocco who did that place. So, not done. So, this 10th board, we are saying, really, let this project take off. It is going to be, those of you who have, it is not yet, it was in our other publications, but Pension Towers is going to be the key building in Kampala, and it will be a member's pride. We think during our tenure, we can get this project off, and we've budgeted about 800 billion yearly for that. Those real estate projects, mainly that Pension Towers. We want you to ask us in 2-3 years whether that building is up or not. And if it is not up, we deserve some sanction.
We will follow up on that.
The other 3.
Quickly, yes.
The other 3 real estate projects we found were huge pieces of land where Nssf wanted to do affordable housing. That is in Lubowa, in Nsimbe, and in Temanga. These are big chunks of land which can make a whole difference in the accommodation of Ugandans, especially in the city of Kampala. We think we can do some work there, and during this year, we are going to do part of that. All I can say is that all the stakeholders, please allow your board and management to carry out these projects. Because when we say we want to do these projects, everybody, even the person who has never built a two-bedroom house, wants to come and build at Nssf. Please allow your board and management to work on these projects using the most professional, skilled manner and approach possible.
Thank you, Chairman. Richard, quickly, the new frontier, oil and gas. Is Nssf looking there? Any interests?
We evaluate all opportunities available for us. We obviously would be very excited about with participating, but there are always two things we look at: obviously return and safety. In other words, of the investment and the risk. The fact that because with any company investment that you do, there's got to be a cash flow, right? There must be money that is going to eventually come to this entity to be able to repay either the debt, if they take debt, or equity, which is pay dividends. So we do look at them. The biggest challenge has been that there are very few structures. I mean, everybody will tell you that, you know, we've talked about the refinery, but there isn't a structure. You know, there's no company that has basically said we're going to put in the money and we want equity partners. If you look at the other opportunities in the drilling side, of course, we know that there's been some licenses that have been given to people like Tullow Oil and Sinnock and Total. But these companies are listed abroad, and you know, we know that there have been plans or murmurings about them listing locally, and therefore if they do that, we will participate definitely. But there must be, of course, the risk and reward equation to be looked at.
The growth of the economy is projected in the next 3-4 years at 5, 6%, 5.5%. We're looking at your strategy, 20 trillion. Going by our inflation rates again, and looking at the growth rate, isn't this a little ambitious? Are we trying to project faster growth, maybe 7, 8, double-digit growth in the next 3 years?
That's a brilliant question. You know, when I joined the fund 2010, 5 years ago, the fund was about 1.6 trillion shillings. And because of the changes we then introduced at the time, the fund was actually growing at the rate of about 30%. So, double what we're doing at the moment. Obviously, as the ship has become bigger, the growth rates have sort of tempered, and we are now looking at growth rates of between 15 and 20%. Perhaps there might be, as the figure goes up, we might reduce that to maybe 12, 13%. But certainly, we anticipate to see double-digit growth rates, and that's because of the things we're doing. There is a lot of potential, right? I think the chairman mentioned, there's 15 million Ugandans. There's only 1.5 million members who are in the Nssf. If the new law, when the new law is introduced, we'll be able to go and attack all these members who currently are either in informal employment or they are working for companies that have less than the threshold of 5 employees. But we think that we can attract them because we will have two things going for us. We've been in this market for a long time. We know it. We're giving good returns. But secondly, there'll be new products to provide them. I think the big product that everybody anticipates that we are able to offer the people out who are currently not saving with the Nssf is the midterm access, because everybody tells us, we did surveys the other day, and 85% of people we interviewed who are in the informal sector said if they were able to midterm access, in other words, get money before they get the age of 55, they would be able to save with us. So we think that there is a huge potential. We can increase these numbers in terms of coverage, and therefore we can increase our balance sheet and be able to continue to grow at these astronomical rates of double digit.
All right. I want to open up the floor to questions. If you have a question, I have 2 roving microphones. Please raise your hand. And yes, there's a lady there. Somebody with the mic on this side? Yes, there's a gentleman. Start with the lady on the here. I'll come to this side. Let's begin here. She had her hand first up. Please, your name, and keep the question short. I have a couple of more minutes, and then we can have everyone ask. We'll come to you, gentlemen, later. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Juliet Carissa. My question goes to the MD. Why is NSSF slow on influencing policies that should allow midterm benefits like education, health, and housing? Thank you.
Richard will take a couple of them, then you probably bundle them up. Yes, your name?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Oprong John. I come from the workers' world, that is Notum. I have two questions. One is that we have had, it's an open secret that you have a regulator in place. And it's also an open secret that you pay the regulator, I think yearly, money NSSF pays. What value addition has this regulator brought to NSSF? Please don't dodge this question. Two, the second one last.
Very quickly, yes, yes.
Is that we have had, you have told us that the money government has borrowed, and we have heard about bailout. Is NSSF giving money bailout to companies that are crying out, or using workers' money for bailout? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there was a lady there, where you started from. The first question, Richard, I don't envy your job, but...
Hello, my name is Sonia from UTL. This question goes to the ND. What is the rationale of NSSF Exco flying business class whenever on business travel abroad? Two, is the cost efficient for the members? Can't they fly economy, for instance, and save on workers' funds?
A very good question.
All right, Richard, let's take these three.
Yeah, okay. Fantastic question. Actually, I would like to begin with Sonia. It's actually not true that Exco flies business class all the time. The rule is that if they're flying more than 5 hours, that's when they fly business. And when they're flying for training, they fly economy. So training and less than 5 hours, they fly economy class. I am one of the biggest fans of costs, all right? Everybody will tell you that when I came to the fund, we had a huge, huge wastage. We've been able to bring our percentages down. I mean, the numbers are so obvious. Our activities have increased. We've not increased our costs. Our revenues have increased. We've not been able to do that. And we're very, very cautious about this. But certainly, it's something that we care about. I'll then go back to the question that was raised by Juliet in terms of being slow in implementing policy. I think it's...
access.
Yeah, yeah. Why are we slow in implementing the policy, influencing the policy? I think that you're absolutely right, but you know, it's like going to your funeral and trying to negotiate how that's going to be like, because you'll be dead. But we are conflicted. I think that we can go as far as telling the public, telling the members of parliament. I get the opportunity every time I talk to members of parliament. I say, please, this policy has been sitting in parliament since 2011. We know the benefits of it. Right? The big benefits are it will allow us to increase coverage, it will allow us to give more products, it will allow us to increase the number of savings for this economy. One of the reasons, and I mentioned it briefly, but I would like to sort of talk about it. The reason why interest rates are up, and it's sad the minister is here. One of the reasons interest rates are up is because government borrows long term from the short term, right? They borrow from commercial banks. Now, if they're borrowing from the commercial banks for the long term, right, that means that the people who would like to borrow from the commercial banks, the private sector, will have to compete with them. And, you know, as a banker, as a former banker, I know that it's better to lend to government than to lend to a guy who's got a lot of risk. So, you know, you don't need a financial degree to be able to confirm that risk is better with the government. So you will definitely lend the government rather than try and lend to the private sector. So that's why the prices go up. So if the pension sector were to attract more players, we had more people investing their money with pension, then there would be more money for the government to invest in the long term and therefore borrow from the pension sector. The number I always use is that there are only 1.5 million members. We've been able to raise almost 7 trillion shillings. What would happen if we brought in even another 3 million, right? That would be maybe another 8, 9, 10 trillion shillings. And that one, government will be able to then borrow, or government and the private sector will be able to borrow and from that particular. So there are advantages for reforming this sector. Unfortunately, it's the politicians who make these decisions. I think there are more interesting things to discuss for politicians rather than looking at the pension sector. But we continue our best and, you know, in the circumstances without infringing on this conflict of interest. John asked a question about the value we get from the regulator. The regulator is in the house, so I have to be very careful how I answer this one. To be quite frank, I think there is a conflict of interest if the regulator is leaving off a player. So if we decided not to pay the money, the regulator wouldn't have any budget. So I think that there is inherently a conflict of interest that has been built within the law. But I suppose the law has actually provided that the regulator will be funded by the players within the industry. So I suppose the reason the regulator was created is to improve on the risk. Okay, they ask for a lot of reports. They make sure that the trustees are fit and proper people. They make sure that we invest in the asset classes which we've said we are supposed to invest in. They do a lot of research from other markets and bring that as best practice within the industry. So there is value. Whether it is as good as how much we pay is subject to discussion. John asked another question on the bailouts. I can say categorically that the bailouts have not reached us. We don't even know who these companies are that are distressed. We also read about them in the papers. I can assure the members of the Nssf that we invest in companies that are listed on the stock exchange. As far as I'm aware, none of the distressed companies are listed on the stock exchange, and we can only invest in them as equity. So we do not do any loans. We stopped, the last loan we did was to Uganda Clays, and that's before the law changed. So we do not do any loans, and with Uganda Clays, we are resolving that. So I would like to assure our members watching and those listening that definitely there are no bailouts, and we will not touch them even if they wanted to.
Chairman, you wanted to say something on the point?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on a rejoinder on the Juliet's question, Juliet